Hey guys, I'm just going to chime in here really quickly to tell you about Energetic Consulting. We are a sales, marketing and business management support consultancy dedicated to the Australian solar power, renewable energy and clean tech industries. We can help you with all your marketing needs and sales training and business management coaching. So have a look at our website, www.energeticconsulting.com.au, and let's see how we can help your business grow and scale to take you to the next level.
Welcome to another episode of Sustainable Stories. This series is all about providing strategies and support for businesses right now in the solar power and renewable energy industry, clean tech industries, to help people with mental health and well-being during COVID-19 especially, but not just around that period, also ongoing. It's a series where I interview business leaders to really get into their stories of how they've overcome their own personal challenges and struggles along the way throughout their career. It's a very personal series and finding, how they build resilience and what their habits and routines are in their own lives. Because let's face it, you don't become a senior leader of business unless you have some of those parts of your life, well taken care of, so you can lead others. And today I'm really pleased to have Keisha Naranjo from Fronius Australia on the series. Keisha has been the leader, the managing director, CEO of Fronius Australia for just under 4 years, or 3.5 to 4 years. Keisha has a degree, I think it's a double degree in engineering and law, and is a really integral part of the solar industry, and really throws herself in getting behind campaigns like this and really being on the front foot, is very proactive. So Keisha, it's such a pleasure to have you on board, and welcome to the series.
Thank you so much, Russell, and thanks for doing these. It's a fantastic opportunity and not something we see too much in solar. So thank you for taking the initiative and inviting me along.
My pleasure, and it's a really nice time to just take a step back. Often, we all get driven, we get competitive, we want to succeed. But we don't know the stories behind the people, and we don't know how people have gotten to where they are. And also, just the human aspect of our industry, and being able to get behind that and just talk to, hey, are we all okay? How is our own mental health? What can we share right now and collaborate on? So I'm really keen to understand your story more, and it might be helpful if you just fill us in a little bit, on the last few years of your journey and even before Fronius, what your backstory is.
Sure. Okay. Well, my journey, as you mentioned, started with Fronius just under 4 years ago. I wasn't in the solar industry before that. I was in the legal industry, working for a family company, and it was a really great base for me working for that firm, because just like, I guess, a lot of companies in the solar industry, it had been around for a long time. It was probably about 35 years in operation when I joined, but it had always been quite a small company, a small family company, pretty much run by one man who was a big mentor to me. And it was a pretty small team when I joined. And I guess after I joined, there started to be a big push for growth by the children and making a bigger impact in what they were doing. And they were really grounded in a solid vision and a good purpose. And so I really was inspired by that and this challenge of making it bigger and taking that strong purpose and helping to grow that company. So I was very blessed in that sense that I was given a lot of opportunities early on in my career to not only practice my craft as a lawyer with a lot of trust. In a lot of ways, their motto was throw everyone in the deep end and sink or swim, which, works in some cases and not so well in others. But for me, it really, I think, was a fantastic grounding for everything that's come since in my career. And yeah, it also allowed me to do many different things aside from that. So get involved with various aspects of the business and business development and managing people and other aspects. And I guess as I was doing it, I came to learn a lot about myself, and there was a lot of challenges in it, a lot of multitasking, a lot of trying to stretch myself across many different aspects of the career and trying to figure out what I really loved about it. And I guess the one thing that I did well in that time was seeing different opportunities and taking them. So even though it caused me to maybe stretch myself too thin at times, I was able, not only was I given the opportunities, but I was willing to take the opportunities and figure out in that early stage, or very quickly, maybe quicker than most in a lot of their careers, what it is that I really wanted to do. So
and what is that? What did you discover?
So I think what it really helped me figure out was that I love working with people and seeing growth in other people. I think it also helped me work out that I love finding solutions to problems and being I guess making an impact, growing a business. Those were the things I really loved. And I guess when the opportunity came up at Fronius to take the managing director role, it really, while it also resounded with my personal feelings towards wanting to make or leave a better world in terms of the environment, it really also gave me a lot of opportunities to make an impact on the team and help develop the business here and not just maintain the success, but grow the success in Australia.
Well, and you've certainly done that. I mean, you know, Fronius is such an iconic brand, and I think what you've brought to the company is a lot of warmth and obviously, you know, intelligence and strategic thinking, but there is this sense of Fronius being like a really warm company to be involved with. It feels almost like a family. And, you know, those customers that buy from you, you know, it feels like the Fronius family, they're well taken care of. It's a very personable approach that you guys take and that you've instilled in your team. And the company's growing, you know, incredibly so. And it's a real testament to you in how you've done that. So well done.
Thank you. I can't say I can take full credit for that, though. I think I joined Fronius because a lot of that was already there in the company, and I knew coming from a family company that that's what I also wanted to be part of. So I think it's also important to know whenever you're making a decision like that, you know, not just what you want, but what's the bigger picture? What do you really want to be part of? Yeah. And it is a family company. It was started by Gunter Fronius, but now it's run by his granddaughter. His grandson is in the welding division. Our CEO, who's the granddaughter, Mrs. Elizabeth Strauss, her sister Petra Strauss runs the legal department. So you very much feel that. And I guess from the get-go, it's always been demonstrated to me from the very first interview I did with them that the people at the highest level within Fronius are very warm and very family orientated. And, you know, they're not too... I guess there's no egos that make it too difficult to talk to anyone within the company. And so there's great relationships between the Fronius Australia subsidiary and our headquarters and the people that work in our headquarters. There's no one in management that our team can't reach out to and speak to directly. And even recently, you know, during this COVID situation, we had a team meeting, and you know, it just lit up our whole team that the global CEO, Mrs. Strauss, joined our team meeting and did a bit of a Q&A with one of our staff members. So it's really from a top-down approach. So I can't take credit for that. And my team and the way that they treat the customers has been like that from long before I was here. So, the one thing I can just sort of maybe take credit for is that, or one of the reasons why I think I was brought in was because I fit that mentality and that culture, and I was going to encourage that to continue.
Yep. And I think, I'm sure there's like some degree of modesty in the sense that, I mean, these things don't just happen by themselves. Yes, it's ingrained in the company culture. Yes, some of these things existed before you arrived, but to actually keep such an iconic brand moving forward, to keep customers, making purchases and loyal to the brand is no easy feat, because that can change overnight. Another company, makes a few plays and then they start to grow. So I think, obviously you've managed to lead the team in that way and maintain that culture, but grow the culture as well. So I think that's a real credit to you. And earlier you mentioned that you had a mentor in the early part of your career through the legal side of things. So I'm interested to know that growing up, did you have mentors in your life that helped you get to where you are today? And do you also have mentors today?
Yeah, I definitely did, Russell. I had a lot of people. I probably didn't realize it at the time. I think when you're young, you tend to think you're achieving things on your own. But when you reflect back later in life, you realize how many people were there to actually support and guide you. So, going way back to, I think my mum was a huge mentor for me. Not so much in specifically anything she did in her career, but just how hard she worked. Both my parents had pretty challenging lives, and but my mum in particular was extremely hardworking and would do everything for us financially, but also then I guess come home and take care of us. And also the belief that both my parents gave us that we could really do anything we set our minds to. I never sort of had in my mind that anything was off limits for me. I always thought, and that comes with living in a country like Australia where there are a lot of opportunities, even for those that don't come from the most financially, I guess, solid backgrounds. But I think for us in particular, we didn't feel like we were disadvantaged in any way from a financial background. So I think my mum was a big mentor. Later in life, I came to really have a strong appreciation for my grandmothers. My grandmothers, I never realised or appreciated the level of sacrifice or what they did to come to Australia. So my parents were born in India, and both their parents moved out to Australia sort of in their 40s and 50s. And so they worked extremely hard in a country which wasn't that easy for immigrants at the time. And both of them had very different lives in India, servants and not really having to work, or one of my grandmothers did, but the other one didn't, and sort of having to start from scratch at 50 years old. I can't even imagine doing that with 10 children.
Wow.
So I've always been surrounded by strong women, I would say, but definitely had that appreciation later. And in my career, definitely a few. There probably wasn't a lot of women or even men around me growing up that had gone to university or had professional careers. So it was sometimes hard to imagine that kind of future. But I had a great auntie who had a professional career in banking, who sort of made me feel like there was a possibility of going to university and doing something different outside of the environment that I grew up in. And also some other great women. I'm probably talking too much. I could go on about this all day. But recently, just to touch on your last one, my legal mentor was definitely the gentleman who'd run the business for 40 years, and his daughter. And they both, I think what I learned most from them was that their ability to lead people, and that no problem was ever too big to go to them. They never once reacted to anything I stuffed up. They gave a lot of leash, and when you failed, they never reacted. They always just looked for the solution. And that was, you know, having that kind of face at the early stages of my career, where it was okay to fail, and be honest about it, was really a great place to start from.
I don't think it is, and because, I mean, certainly in my own career, it took me a long time to learn about failure. You know, I think a lot of us want to be driven, we want to succeed, we want to have impact, we want to do great things, but inevitably we're going to fail or make a mistake. And it's only really a failure if we keep making that mistake over and over. So it's great that you had that opportunity. And I think everyone has different opportunities. You had some very strong role models in your life, and no doubt still do. And some people don't. I mean, some people literally just don't have anyone. They came from a very broken home. The environment they grew up in, there were no strong role models, so therefore they have to seek them. And I know in my own world that I definitely had strong role models, but I also sought them out because I wanted to grow. And I knew I didn't want to just maintain the status quo. And for me, I see that in yourself, that you've had a desire to grow and evolve and keep evolving. You know, obviously there's plateaus along the way that we all experience. But I'm interested in, I don't often like to talk about gender because I think it's a meritocracy. You know, we earn things on merit. I've certainly worked for some incredible female leaders, but I know there are some female, you know, leaders in our industry, or just, you know, employees, staff, whatever level they may be at, some women in the industry that I think certainly are inspired by what you've achieved. And because it takes a particular individual to be able to get to that point, whether you are a man or a woman, but it's certainly in an industry like solar power, which traditionally has had a lot of, you know, male predominance within the industry. I think it can be more challenging, and especially, you know, technical fields, etc. Have you been impacted by that along the way?
I think, thanks for this question. I think, you know, we're all impacted by whatever it is that's a character trait of yourself that might play into the workforce. So I think, you know, I'm definitely impacted, and I would be in any role. And like you said, it is a meritocracy, and it's not something I like to dwell on, but the reality is there are differences, and we're in a stage now where we're working towards, I guess, having more females in different positions in leadership in general across industries, and what that looks like, and adapting to that and adapting to the changes that comes with that. But in solar in particular, it's definitely something, particularly 4 years ago. I feel like it's changed a lot in the last couple of years, but it was confronting to come in and see just how male dominated it was. Coming from a legal background, you know, there's definitely a level of male dominance at a leadership level in law, but it was very confronting in solar. And I think one of the first, I guess, things that really made me feel positive about it, to say the good aspect of it, was I was at a Solar Juice function, and there was a number of manufacturers up on the stage, and they were doing a bit of a Q&A, and afterwards, I won't say the name because I'm not sure if they'd appreciate it, but afterwards, a woman who's been in the industry for a very long time, who has been nothing but supportive the entire time, even when she's been at a competitor, came up to me and said, you know, it was so wonderful to see a woman on that stage. She's been in solar for decades. She said it was so wonderful to see a woman up on that stage, dressed in a suit and speaking the way you were speaking. And then the next day at All Energy, she brought a little girl up to my booth and got me to give her some advice and do a bit of a Q&A. She would have only been, you know, about 6 or 7 years old. And it was just such a rewarding experience. So I'd have to say in that regard, it's been really positive. There's been challenges at times with, you know, often being the only female in the room. But I have to say solar in general, as an industry, I think because it's a new industry, and people are doing amazing feats all the time, building businesses up from scratch, not doing things always the traditional way.
Yep.
People in solar, male or female, tend to have this attitude where if you can prove to them your value, and sometimes they can make you prove your value, but if they can see that, then they give you all the respect in the world, male or female. So I think that's the really beautiful thing about our industry.
I think so too. And you know, just on that example of the little girl coming up to you, I mean, we as humans, I mean, this is a human series, Sustainable Stories, you know, just about the human people behind these great companies and really what makes them tick. And that little girl, we just don't know the impact that they can have in the world by being a leader and actually, you know, stepping up and trying to be our best in the world, that you can impact one person and you don't know the chain of events that occur after that, because you never see them again, right? But the whole thing about leadership is showing up and to be your best and to keep consistently being your best and evolving and learning and being a role model to others. I can guarantee you, I know this from firsthand experience, you know, after many years, that someone will be listening to this, watching this, and they will get one golden nugget that will impact and change them for years to come. That happened in my life many times because I sorted out, and all it takes is, you know, someone could be on the brink right now. Someone's got a small business and they're thinking about closing the doors, or someone, you know, a woman in business is thinking, I can't do it, it's too hard. And all it takes is one little golden nugget that they take away that sets them back on course again or helps them go to the next level. And that's what I'm fascinated by. And that's why we do this, right? Because we put our comfort zones off to the side a little bit, and we get real and we get a little bit dirty and say, hey, like, you know, what are our fears? What are our doubts? What are our concerns? And how do we overcome those? And I guess on that point, you know, I would have heard, you know, that you would have had doubts along the way that, geez, this is hard, you know, being the only female in a room full of guys and are all like, you know, talking tech stuff and maybe some testosterone's flowing. So on that point, I mean, you've come, no doubt, up against fears and doubts. How did you overcome those? What was the approach?
I think facing your fears, it's not something I can say I've overcome. But my approach I still have them every day. I think my approach has always been to just do what makes me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And reflecting, I think I've always done that from an early age. I'm not someone that's ever liked public speaking, but I've always done it since a young age. I've always been quite an anxious individual, but yet I continually find myself in these situations and I don't know why, which make me anxious.
Were you like me at high school? I used to have to do public speaking and my knees would be knocking and my palms would be so sweaty.
Yes.
I remember I had to do a presentation to 1,200 students and I was like a mess. I could barely get the words out, but you just know that repetition, you just get better every time.
Well, I think I don't, it's so true. And I don't know what made me that way. I can't say there was a point that I can identify, but all I know is I was always in these situations which I just didn't think I could do it, but my wanting to, I guess, achieve something, or somewhat, probably to some extent, be the best at whatever it was, take the opportunity that was available, that sometimes I put my hand up for things that I thought later, why did you do that?
Yeah.
This is not something you want to do. And I always thought that was normal until really until I started at Fronius, and there was a few occasions where I realized how much fear was holding different people back from doing things.
Yeah.
And it really dawned on me then that not everybody does find it within them to take those opportunities. Not to say that, you know, there's still things every day which I avoid because it gives me some some level of fear and anxiety. So I haven't, that's why I'm saying I haven't mastered it, but that's generally how I deal with it. I know that inevitably you have to walk through it,
Yes,
in order to get there.
and I think, well, firstly, there's a great saying around that, and hopefully I'll get it right, but it's essentially like the juice and the spark of life is how willing we are to step outside our comfort zones. I mean, it comes from how willing we are to step outside our comfort zones. If we stay comfortable all the time, life loses its edge, its juiciness and the spark, which keeps us fully alive and fully engaged. But we all do it, right? We get to a point where we kind of like plateau and we're like, oh, this is cozy and comfortable. And then we kind of, get going again.
Yeah.
But that's for starters. But I think right now, like in the industry, understandably, there's a lot of fear out there. People are, business owners may have to close their businesses or let go of staff or have already done so. And this isn't just about business leaders. I mean, people will be concerned about their jobs. We've had bushfires, we've had floods. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's been going on over the last months, and the fear exists. Yet there's really only, one way to deal with it, which is to confront it and to say, I'm afraid, but I'm going to do it anyway. Now, it's not to say I'm not trying to diminish in any shape or form, businesses having to close their doors. I mean, I had a multi-million-dollar solar business for many years, through the noughties and just out of, into, 2010, 11, 12. And I ended up closing my doors because I'd hit that point of like, okay, it's time to move on to other things. So I'm not trying to diminish in any way, but we still have to like get up in the morning and deal with the issues at hand. And it's not always easy. No. Not at all.
Definitely not. And I think, that's a whole nother level of fear. That's fear that even I can't comprehend. So you're right. It's something that we all know that you can't get through it without confronting it, but doesn't make it any easier, I guess. I think the only thing in those, from what I've learned from really other people in the industry, because I think one of the biggest, factors in my success so far has been having really, really great resources of information around me. A lot of them are my customers. So, especially coming into solar and not knowing a lot about it, people have been incredibly generous with the wealth of information that they've given me and experience. And so really I can't speak from my own experience there, but I can maybe speak on behalf of them, is that it's the only comfort you can take is that there's nothing new in this situation. Even in the pandemic, this has been experienced by millions and millions of people before, and it probably will be experienced by millions of people again. And we can only take some comfort in that, and that we will get through it and find a solution, because that's That's what we as humans do, and we can look to other people who have been through that cycle, particularly in solar, because whatever the cause, industry disruption has happened before.
Yep.
And so in that sense, we're quite lucky that there is already a wealth of information in our industry of dealing with disruption, and a lot of people who are very generous to share information with others.
Keisha, when I first started, I think it's based out of Melbourne. It's the Sustainable Living Foundation. I think it is SLF, right? It's been around for decades. And Steve Ingrell from Going Solar and a stack of other people, you know, had started it many decades ago. And I met some of those people that had been sort of pounding, you know, the pavement and fighting the good fight of renewable energy since the 70s, right? And I'm like, how do you guys do it? You know, we're up against such challenges and hardships, and how do you guys do it? I mean, if we think it's hard now, and, you know, back then it was in the noughties, whatever that was, 2007 or something. How did you do it in the 70s? And they're like, well, you just start in your own backyard. You literally you start at that point, and then the influence starts to radiate outwards. I mean, it's 6 degrees of separation. But you be a leader from your own backyard, and then that will impact one person, and then that impacts 6 people, and it grows. And we forget that, you know, we forget how influential and powerful we actually are, because often many of us, and I've felt like this for years, have imposter syndrome. Like, who the hell am I to be talking about this stuff, you know? And I remember early on in my career, I wanted to be an Al Gore climate champion. I think it was. I can't remember what year it was. I don't know, 2002 or something like that. I can't remember. And I got rejected for it. I'm like, oh, why would you reject me? Come on. Like, I will pound this pavement so hard to fight this fight. And then I felt like an imposter. I was like, well, clearly I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know what I'm doing. And I thought, screw that. Like, who cares? You know, like, you can just influence one person and the next, and it flows. And, you know, we don't have to have all the answers. We're greater as a team and collaborating than we are as individuals. No doubt.
And I think, you know, in terms of relationships, just to go a different direction there, I think being open to that not knowing and seeking that information has been a lot of the ability to connect with people in this industry and maintain those relationships and build trust with people by saying, I don't know, you're going to have to tell me. Yeah. You're going to have to tell me here. Or, you know, when I disputed something, especially in the earlier days, that was going on with the customer, just sort of saying, okay, these are the things that don't make sense to me, but you're the one that's experienced here. Yeah. And not everyone took to that, but I would say by far, you know, most people appreciated that response from someone coming in new to the industry, because it could have very much gone the other way. Apologies, that's the sensor lights in my office.
But look, and the last interview that I released, one of the last interviews that I released is by a guy called Bruce Hall, who actually is my business mentor. But I didn't just do it because of that. I mean, that's, you know, we've had a connection for over 10 years. He's one of, you know, my advisors. But he always said to me, you know, like, you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. You may be the smartest person in the room, but allow other people to step up, share their information, and come in with humility. Hey, I actually don't know what the answer is here. You know, I'm just a humble electrician, or I'm just a humble lawyer, or whatever it might be. But maybe, you know, you guys could share your wealth of experience, and I could learn something here. And it's certainly, it was a lesson that I took on board, you know, strongly. I mean, our egos can get in the way because we want to be smart, we want to be successful, but actually over time we realize that doesn't always get the best results.
No, and definitely not with leading a team. Like, internally, sometimes people are looking to you for answers, and you feel that's supposed to be my job, is to have an answer at any given second for any problems that arise. And sometimes, or I'd say a lot of the time, it's taken me a while to really put this regularly into practice. But a lot of the time is to know when's the time to give an answer and show, give them a bit of a confidence boost that the direction is there. And when is the time to say, I either need to sit on this, digest this, I don't know the answer.
Yeah.
Let me even think about the questions I've got to ask you and come back to you. Or, I really need to rely on your expertise here, because I'm going to ask you some questions, but you need to tell me what the answer is here, because you're much more knowledgeable in so many areas of this business than I am.
Yes.
And as the leader of the organisation, that can sometimes, you sometimes don't want to say that because your ego gets in the way and you think, I should be, as the leader, I should be the best one here. But in reality, it's not the case. My team is much better than me at many different things in the world of Fronius. So
absolutely, and the point of a leader isn't to lead and be the best. The point of like a leader is to actually help others shine and to become leaders themselves. And if your staff are leading and doing an amazing job, then just by the pure nature of it, you actually are doing an amazing job and you look fantastic, up the chain anyway. And it's this mutually beneficial approach that when we raise other people up, we actually, raise ourselves up at the same, as part of the process naturally.
Definitely.
So I'm keen to know, because I'm a personal, I don't know if obsession is the right word, but I'm very attracted to routines and strategies and habits and what people do to get themselves going in the morning. Have you got anything that you do to set up your day for success? I mean, some people literally just say, I have a coffee and that's it. But other people have some strategies. Is there anything that you do to get going?
Yeah, I probably haven't over the course of my life been the best with, maintaining strong habits, but I think joining Fronius has really forced that more and more upon me. So for me, it's something that's an evolving process. I think the reason behind that as well is because I started doing so much traveling. I think in my first year at Fronius, I was traveling. I think I traveled almost 4 months of the year that I wasn't at home. And I guess there was 4 or 5 trips to Europe, which also threw me off balance. I was very jet lagged all of the time because I'm terrible. It takes me about 2 weeks to recover. So I think I really started building those morning habits out of a sense of necessity, and always having to be on for everybody was draining as well, especially when you're sort of in and out and you have got so much imbalance in your day-to-day life. Like no day was the same. So I think exercise has been that for me. I do try to meditate when I really, really need it, but I'm not a great meditator. I did have a course that we did over about 10 weeks for the staff where we all learned how to meditate. But I probably haven't been as great at practicing that. But I do it when I really need to. But for me, it's about just switching off the brain for a little while every morning. And for me, that was doing a gym class 4 or 5 days a week. And that was the only time where I was 100% focused on getting through the class. And it was very difficult for other thoughts to permeate during that time if I was really pushing myself. I try and make sure I eat. So I'm not breakfast. I was never a big breakfast eater, but I do try and make sure I do that. So I'm set up for the day. And I do try and have a bit of a time where I wake up and I don't jump straight into doing anything. I digest, I read some emails, I just process what I need to do for the day for a little bit of time as well in the morning. And even the night before, I try not to think too far ahead in terms of just day-to-day activities. So I just try and think about what I need to do for the next day. Obviously, long-term strategy development's different, but on a day-to-day basis, I try and just think about the night before, the morning of, what do I need to do today? Mentally prepare myself for that, and what breaks I have, what am I going to do in those breaks? What do I need to get through in these meetings? And then try and be present throughout the day. So I guess it's all about getting that mindset of being present.
And have you ever found you fall into overwhelm? Because I think a lot of businesses and people right now are falling into overwhelm, and it's really tricky to get out of that space.
Yeah, definitely. That's why for me, it's an evolving process. So I could probably learn more from you, Russell, and in a lot of respects than you can from me. But yeah, definitely, I feel overwhelmed. I think that's normal. Yeah. I think negative emotions, though, are a good indicator for us that something needs to be addressed, and can also be like a call to action that you do need to do something. And you know what? Sometimes it's just giving yourself a morning off, have a few more hours sleep. That can be your call to action. Sometimes, sometimes it's you just need a few hours to just think things through. So to give you an example, yesterday afternoon, I was feeling a bit overwhelmed. Where do I start? And I didn't have any meetings, and I thought I could call this person, I could do this, I could do this. And in the end, I just said to myself, no, I'm just going to think for a few hours and just let my thoughts go where they need to go, and what's got to come beyond the next few days, what's got to come in the next few weeks, in the next few months, and allowing myself that time when I'm feeling overwhelmed, I find is helpful.
Absolutely, because the pressure starts to build up, and when we start to redline, a lot of us have, especially A-type personalities, very driven personalities, want to just keep pushing through, and we can do that for a period of time, but eventually we break. And it's emotional intelligence and awareness to say, no, actually, I need to just stop and switch gears to another, approach. And I'm interested to talk about that, because you mentioned that you might just take, 1 or 2 hours out to think about what needs to be done. And I think that's critical for business leaders is, where's your creativity time? Where's your processing time? It can't always be about meetings. Like, when I set up Enphase Energy and I went to the US, in a 10-day business period, I had 72 meetings. 72 freaking meetings, man. Like, that's enough to break anyone. And, I was okay, but I just thought there's no time in there actually to process and to get creative and innovative. Do you find that you create space for that? Like you just said, it's critical.
Yeah, I do. I've seen it in so many people around me, and I've also seen the health effects on people around me who are like that. So I guess I've been very lucky to learn from those people without having to get to that point myself.
Yeah.
Because I probably was on that trajectory for a while, but I was able to learn the importance of doing that. So for me, some weeks, like you mentioned, it's going 150 miles an hour, and you want to build in those breaks, but it's just not possible. So for me, I just like to do it when it's possible. My general standard week, when I'm not traveling, when I don't have additional projects going on, but my normal week I've sort of set up in a way where I do a lot of meetings on the first few days of the week. And then the last 2 days of the week, I leave as free as possible to do things like this, ad hoc things that come up.
Yep.
You know, give myself a bit of breathing space to think through different topics, have longer strategy meetings, because otherwise sometimes the meetings that you have during the week is just, you know, really surface level. And, you know, soon, and I should turn off my Skype in case he calls, I'm about to have a longer strategy meeting with one of my sales team. So just to make sure that it is, you do build in that time to see customers. Sometimes one of my biggest dilemmas is feeling like I'm not giving enough to the team, and then feeling like I'm not giving enough to the customers when I am giving a lot to the team. So trying to create some balance there, but it's an ever evolving thing. And I just try, and when I don't get the balance right, just be a little bit forgiving of myself, and you try again the next week.
Yeah, and you learn, like we said earlier, that, you know, if we make mistakes, that's okay. But it's the only time it's not okay is we keep making that same mistake over and over again. I mean, has your career, from an outsider's point of view, right? Like, this is, sorry to pigeonhole you, but it's like, wow, everything she touches turns to gold, right? And clearly, I'm sure that's not the case. So have you had some major setbacks in your career or your personal life that you had to overcome to grow to be the person that you are today?
Yeah, I guess that's a tough one for me, because I don't think I've ever looked at anything as a major failure. Maybe at the time when it doesn't feel good, you know, and you fail at something, you see it as a failure, but I'm pretty quick to put things in perspective and move on. So to say there was a single, you know, major failure of some sort, I can't pinpoint.
Or
I
around
think
the
for
setbacks.
me, yeah, setbacks. I think for me, university was a really big setback for me. I didn't really fit well at university. I struggled a lot through it, and it really sort of my self-esteem probably suffered during that time of what I could achieve. And there are multiple reasons for that, which is too long for this phone call. So that was a big setback for me, and probably the options that were open to me upon graduating was a setback for me. I think there was probably, in my legal career, definitely times where I really felt like I let people down by not doing a good job, and maybe stretching myself too thin or making the wrong call, which sometimes, you know, wanting to crawl out the trapdoor in a courtroom when you've stuffed up. There's nothing like it in the world. I'm not sure if you've seen that video of I think it was it the president goes to shake the little boy's hand and he drops to the floor and crawls out the room.
I haven't seen that one.
I've felt like that on many occasions, and I think in terms of Fronius, yeah, there's been several times where I've just thought, oh wow, I've really stuffed this up, and you know, I couldn't see at the time of a way of turning the situation around, and I probably can't go into those things without breaching some sort of company confidentiality. But the only thing I can say is that I was able to get support in those scenarios, which was a turning factor for me. I think needing to ask for someone else's help and getting that help and that support, and getting through the situation has been a really big, I guess, development for me personally in the last few years, because and it's looking back, it was starting at university and saying, I'm failing here, and I need some help to get through this. Yeah.
And that's what I'm really interested in, is that mindset, because I think so many of us feel like we have to succeed and do everything right and everything's going to be perfect. And that just ain't reality. You know,
Mm,
we all have ups and downs. And when we start to compare ourselves to other people, we think, oh my God, why have they got it together? But as you know, we know, like in this conversation, it's not always the case. You know, like no one knows what your personal journey is like but you.
mm,
And it has highs and lows, and we all have that, and it's our common humanity that we do. And so therefore, you know, we shouldn't judge ourselves by comparing to anyone else, because like you've just indicated, you also needed to put your hand up and say, hey, I'm not okay right now, I need some support. Who can help me get through this? And yet look where you are. You're a senior business leader, you're a woman in the renewable energy industry, you're a female leader, you're a managing director, and yet you had that journey, and you're not the only one, and yet you can still get through that and succeed. And that's what this whole series is about, is showing that, you know, it is possible to keep moving forward, putting one foot in front of the other, and still finding a rhythm and success during really difficult times.
yeah, and look, I've also been incredibly lucky as well. And yeah, it sounds cliche, but the ability to recognize how lucky I am, and always being able to point to places where I've been given opportunities, which, you know, other heaps of other people haven't made more deserving than myself, haven't been given, but then striving to make the most of that opportunity. I think there's always going to be scenarios. You mentioned before imposter syndrome, where you feel like you're so lucky to be in that position, and you are incredibly lucky. So I've had a lot of that in my career. And you know, one person I didn't mention before, Mrs. Strauss, I often look at her, and I think when I've got challenges, I go, well, gee, she's running a company with, you know, over 5,000 people, global company, huge pressures, you know, massive challenges of things going wrong day to day, things happening in industry that are beyond control. I mean, you look at this COVID situation,
Yep.
and the amount of people that she has to try and keep employed, where in every country in the world, the situation is different and evolving daily in a different way. And I just, it makes you reflect on how, you know, grateful you should feel, and there are bigger challenges out there. And if she can deal with that and her 3 children and her husband,
Yeah.
then you know, at the very least I can do is try on my side. So.
And you do, right? Because I've seen you, okay, maybe you're in a hard-earned, but like a privileged position, you know, where you are, but you give back. So from that position, like when I started the COVID-19, you know, solar and energy storage industry update and webinar, and we raised $6,000 for St. Vincent de Paul, you were the first sponsor to put your hand up. No worries, platinum sponsor, we're doing this, we're getting right behind you. And I've seen you do it before, the CEO sleep out, you know, for homeless people, this series, and I've seen you do it, you know, throughout the industry, where you put yourself right in there and say, right, what can we give back now? How can we be of service? How can we contribute? How can we be involved, a part of the story, a part of the conversation, which is wonderful. So I just want to honor you for that, Keisha, because that's why I was so keen to get you on this interview, because I knew, you know, you have a heart, you have a lot to give, and it's not just about just the balance sheet, which it is, but it's about the human aspect as well. How you treat your staff, how you lead, how you give back, how you've built and grown a company. So kudos to you.
Oh, that feels really uncomfortable, but thank you, Russell.
That's my job. That's what I'm here to do.
You're very good at it, but no, I wish I wish I actually did more. I don't think we're doing enough. But you know, a big part of my want to join to join Fronius in general, which is probably something I didn't mention, was I just thought energy in itself makes such an impact to the quality of people's lives, or can make such an impact. Like if you're living in a third world country right now with no access to electricity, how do you study at night? How do you create a better future for yourself? You're really limited, in your opportunities, and energy in its purest form just can make such a difference to the quality of life of people around the globe. And so even though renewable energy is just a part of that, it's the decentralization opportunities that can then be brought to so many people. And so it was probably that, or what the potential of doing that. And we've got our Goodwill program, which we're starting to get more and more projects off the ground, which was one of my goals from the time I joined Fronius. Was I wanted to be able to use renewable energy and the decentralization of energy to improve the quality of people's lives. And it's taken a number of years, and we've only really started on a small scale. Because there's balance sheets and things like that have to be taken care of. But yeah, it's been one of the biggest joys so far in the career to be able to participate with our customers who are similarly minded, to do that. It's been a fantastic part of the journey.
To be a force for good. It's a wonderful part of the journey. Look, we're coming towards the end of the interview. It's been a longer one, and I appreciate your time. I know how busy you are. I've only got a couple more questions, and the first one being, have you seen some commonalities in business leaders that are great at what they do? I mean, you come into contact with so many different people. Are there 2 or 3 things that are common from the great business leaders that you've experienced?
I think that understanding, that humility to give faith and trust to the people that they're working with, and not pretend to know all the answers, but to understand the root of the problem, and give people the ability and space to share what the potential solutions might be, and build them up in doing so by allowing others to add value. I think that's been something that's been common with all of the leaders or good business minds I've seen. I think presence. I've had the opportunity to work with, like you said, a lot of good leaders, but particularly in solar, a lot of the most inspiring people to me have been solar business leaders. And they're always, when you're with them, they're always with you, and I'm guilty sometimes of not being so attainable myself as they are, but I think that's because when they're with other people, they're really with them. And they demonstrate that, as well as warmth, and I think those things, a level of power, presence and warmth, they say, is the basis of charisma.
Right. I've never heard that one. That's great.
Yeah, they're the 3 tenets to charisma. And I think that in itself makes a leader that people want to follow. And a good solid foundation, like a good ethical purpose, or the way that they do things is with good ethics. And because you can be powerful, you can be charismatic, you can be smart, you can be all of these things, but if people think you're unethical in some way, shape or form, or you might lead them in the wrong direction, they're not going to follow. So I think the good leaders that I've had, they've always, you always felt a strong sense of goodness, and that they would do the right thing. And I think both my leaders at Fronius International, all of them, and the leaders I had in the legal industry, were all very ethically sound people.
Yep. And those are people that you really want to be around. I mean, that it feels fantastic. And I think often if our values are out of alignment with the business, our personal values are out of alignment with the business that we're working for, we're going to have issues, right? Or if the business that we're involved with, the values aren't, of integrity, or they're out of integrity, it just does not feel good. And that's something that, I think is always worthwhile extracting ourselves from. But when they are in alignment, life is beautiful. Like everything is harmonious and it flows well and it just feels good.
You're not going to agree with them. The thing is, you're not going to agree with them all the time. You're always going to have disagreements. But if you know that about them, it just makes everything so much easier. If you know that about the company you work for, that ultimately they're trying to do good, the problems that you have along the way with that company become so much smaller in the scheme of things.
Yes. And we obviously, that can be created. We can create that ourselves along the way. Like if it's a small business, you can create that culture yourself, and be that leader within your own business. Now, look, I've only got one last question. Imagine it is your last day on planet Earth. It's come to a close. You've had a glorious career. You've done everything that you've ever wanted to do. You've had all your successes. You've had deep impact in the world. Let's just say that you've had children and then grandchildren, if that's your journey, and you have the opportunity to leave those grandchildren 2 or 3 pearls of wisdom. Just 2 or 3 nuggets, whether they be words or phrases or whatever they might be, sentiments, to just of your experience and learnings throughout your life, you can leave them with those 2 or 3 pearls of wisdom. What have you got?
All right. I'm going to share a thought with you, which helps me a lot, but some people find a little bit depressing, which is I like to think that about the fact that there are billions and trillions of stars in the universe, and the Earth is just a tiny, like less than a grain of sand in the scheme of the Earth. And then on that Earth, there are like so many billions of people all living their own lives. And, collectively as a group, of course, we're all important for what we do for the collective. But at the same time, it makes you question, well, what do you really want to do while you're here? Is there anything that powerful that you should be afraid of or worry about, or, not do something because of the consequences? And the reality is that as an individual, there are no, and I don't want to say this because it could be taken the wrong way, but you should really, there are no bad consequences. I would tell my grandchildren that their main purpose in this life is to enjoy the experience, and to therefore fulfill whatever it is that is calling to them, and that they will add to the collective consciousness in whatever way, shape or form by what they learned through that journey. Sorry, it's the solar lights again. So whatever they learned through that journey is all they need to do, and they shouldn't be worried about anything because the universe will keep spinning. That's one.
Yep. Beautiful.
And the other thing I would say is, giving is equal to receiving. I think you get, they're one and the same, and to always remember that in any way, shape or form as they walk through life. If they're feeling not satisfied with something in their life, or things are getting a bit down, that they can always help themselves by maybe doing something that day to help someone else. So giving is receiving.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And Keisha, I just want to say thank you so much for being so available and open and candid in sharing today. I really believe that will make a difference in the lives of others within our industry. I really appreciate you just, like pulling the covers back a little bit and showing, your humanness and your warmth and the big heart that you bring to what you do. And I believe you're a force for good, and we're all the better for having you in the industry. And it's a real pleasure just hearing your story and getting to know you a little bit better, and understanding some of the tools and the techniques and the strategies that you apply to your career, and that's brought you success. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Russell. Same goes for you. I think this has been such an enjoyable conversation, and a real pleasure. And as you said, you never know. I think you had to pull me or sort of push me along to do this a little bit, but definitely well worth it. So thank you very much.
A pleasure. Well, we'll sign off, but until next time, all the best. And thanks, Keisha.
Thanks, Russell. See ya.